My daughter texted, "Dad, Mom's been cheating. I have proof," while I was deployed overseas. I replied, "Thank you for looking out for our family." Then I arranged a homecoming surprise her mother never saw coming. The look on her face when I walked in with cops and caught her red-handed was priceless. I, 42M, was halfway through my third deployment in Afghanistan when my phone buzzed with a message that changed everything. My daughter had sent me something that made my blood run cold, even in the scorching desert heat. The text was simple but devastating. She told me that Mom had been cheating and that she had proof. My hands shook as I stared at the screen, processing words I never thought I'd read. 20 years of marriage, 2 kids, a house we'd built together from nothing, and this is how it would end. I typed back quickly, thanking her for looking out for our family. Inside, I was falling apart, but I couldn't let her know that. She was only 17 and had already been through enough with me being gone for months at a time. The proof came in a series of photos and screenshots. My wife with her co-worker from the insurance office where she worked. Dates, times, hotel receipts she'd carelessly left in her purse. Messages between them talking about how much easier everything would be once I was out of the picture permanently. That last part hit me like a sniper's bullet to the chest. I sat in my bunk that night, staring at the concrete ceiling, planning. My unit wasn't scheduled to return for another 6 weeks, but I had accumulated leave time and a commanding officer who understood that family emergencies sometimes required immediate attention. I told him I needed to go home to handle some personal business, and he signed the papers without asking too many questions. But I wasn't going home to confront her directly. That would be too easy, too clean. She wanted me out of the picture? She was about to get exactly what she deserved. I contacted my lawyer from a secure phone at the base. We'd served together years ago, and he knew how to handle these situations discreetly. I explained everything and sent him the evidence my daughter had provided. He assured me that what we had was more than enough for a favorable divorce settlement, especially given her infidelity and the fact that she was actively planning to leave me. Next, I reached out to my old buddy who worked in private investigation. I needed someone to monitor the situation while I arranged my return. He started surveillance immediately and confirmed that the affair was ongoing. The guy was practically living at my house while I was overseas defending our country. The plan was simple but required perfect timing. I would return home unannounced during one of their encounters, but I wouldn't be coming alone. My lawyer had connections with local law enforcement, and we discovered that her boyfriend had some outstanding issues that warranted police attention. Nothing major, but enough to justify their presence when everything went down. I flew back to the States 3 days later, landing at dawn and driving straight to the police station. The officers I met with were veterans themselves and understood the situation completely. They agreed to accompany me to my house under the pretense of serving some papers related to the boyfriend's legal troubles. My daughter had been staying at her best friend's house for the past few days, claiming she couldn't stand being around Mom anymore. I texted her to let her know I was back and that everything would be handled soon. She was relieved, but worried about how explosive things might get. We arrived at my house at 11 in the morning. 2 patrol cars parked discreetly down the street while I approached the front door with Detective Martinez, who had volunteered to handle the more delicate aspects of the situation. My hands were steady now, all the nervous energy replaced by cold determination. I used my key to enter quietly. The house felt different, violated somehow. There were empty beer bottles on the coffee table, takeout containers I didn't recognize, and men's clothing draped over the chair I used to sit in every evening. The disrespect was breathtaking. We could hear voices upstairs, laughter mixed with other sounds that made my stomach turn. I led Detective Martinez up the stairs slowly, each step carefully placed to avoid the creaks I knew by heart. The bedroom door was partially open. Through the gap, I could see my wife with her co-worker, both of them completely oblivious to our presence. They were discussing weekend plans, talking about which hotel they wanted to visit next, completely comfortable in what they assumed was their private space. Detective Martinez stepped forward and knocked firmly on the doorframe. The reaction was immediate and exactly what I'd hoped for. My wife's face went from relaxed satisfaction to absolute terror in the span of a heartbeat. Her boyfriend scrambled for his clothes, clearly panicked about being caught in such a compromising position. But it was her expression when she saw me standing behind the detective that made everything worthwhile. The color drained from her face completely. Her mouth opened and closed without any sound coming out. For a moment, she looked like she might faint. Detective Martinez announced that they were there to speak with her boyfriend regarding some outstanding legal matters. The man was stammering, trying to explain his presence in my house, but the detective was professional and focused on his official business. I stayed silent, just watching my wife scramble for explanations that would never come. She kept looking at me, waiting for me to explode, to scream, to make a scene. Instead, I remained calm and let the situation unfold naturally. The boyfriend was escorted downstairs to sort out his legal issues, leaving my wife and me alone for the first time. She finally found her voice and started apologizing, saying it wasn't what it looked like, that she could explain everything. I let her talk for a few minutes before I finally spoke. I told her that our daughter had been very thorough in documenting everything. I mentioned the photos, the receipts, the text messages about wanting me out of the picture permanently. Her face somehow got even paler as she realized the extent of what had been discovered. She tried a different approach then, claiming that she'd been lonely, that my deployments had been too hard on her, that she'd made a mistake but still loved me. I listened without interruption, then calmly informed her that my lawyer would be contacting her about divorce proceedings. The panic in her eyes was immediate and genuine. She asked about the house, the kids, our finances. I explained that her infidelity, combined with the evidence we had, would significantly impact how assets were divided. I also mentioned that our son, who was away at college, had been informed about the situation and was understandably disappointed in her choices. What followed was 3 hours of the most satisfying conversation of my life. Every lie she tried to tell was met with specific evidence to the contrary. Every excuse was countered with documentation my daughter had provided. Every attempt at manipulation was shut down with calm, factual responses. By the time the police finished with her boyfriend, my wife was sitting on our bed in complete defeat. The man she'd been cheating with was facing legal consequences and wanted nothing more to do with the situation. Her comfortable little fantasy had collapsed in a matter of hours. Update 1. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal activity. My lawyer moved quickly to freeze joint accounts and protect my interests. My wife had apparently been spending significant amounts of our money on her affair, including hotel stays, expensive dinners, and gifts for her boyfriend. All of this was documented and would factor into the divorce settlement. My daughter came home that evening, and we had a long conversation about everything that had happened. She was proud that she'd done the right thing, but felt guilty about the family falling apart. I assured her that none of this was her fault and that she'd shown incredible maturity and loyalty. My son drove down from college the next weekend. He was angry with his mother, but also concerned about how the divorce would affect everyone's future. I explained that I would make sure both kids could continue their education and that they would always have a stable home with me. The most surprising development came when my wife's boyfriend reached out to me directly. He claimed he hadn't known the full extent of her plans and wanted to apologize for his role in everything. He also revealed that she'd been telling him I was abusive and that she was afraid of me, which explained why he'd felt justified in the affair. This information was particularly valuable because it showed a pattern of manipulation and dishonesty that went beyond simple infidelity. My lawyer was pleased to add this to our growing pile of evidence. Update 2. 3 weeks later, the divorce proceedings were moving forward rapidly. My wife had hired her own attorney, but the evidence against her was overwhelming. Her lawyer advised her to accept a settlement rather than fight it in court, where everything would become public record. The house would be sold, with the majority of proceeds going to me due to her infidelity and misuse of marital funds. I would retain custody of our daughter until she turned 18, and both kids would continue to live with me primarily. Child support would be minimal since I earned significantly more, and she would be starting over professionally. Her affair partner had disappeared completely after the legal issues were resolved. Apparently, the reality of being involved with a married woman whose husband was a decorated military veteran was more than he'd bargained for. My wife was left dealing with the consequences entirely alone. The most satisfying moment came when she tried to claim that I had set her up, that bringing the police was excessive and vindictive. Her own lawyer had to explain that everything I'd done was perfectly legal and that her conduct had left me with few alternatives for protecting my interests. Update 3. 6 months after that devastating text message, my life had stabilized into something better than I'd imagined possible. The divorce was finalized with terms that were more favorable than I'd expected. My wife received a small settlement, and moved into a modest apartment across town. My daughter had flourished without the constant tension in the house. She was accepted to several good colleges and was excited about her future. My son transferred to a school closer to home so he could be more involved with family during the transition. The house sold quickly, and I found a smaller place that felt more like home than the one I'd shared with my wife. There were no painful memories here, no reminders of betrayal and lies. My ex-wife attempted to reconcile several times, claiming she'd made a terrible mistake and wanted to work things out. Each time, I reminded her of the text messages about wanting me out of the picture permanently. That particular piece of evidence had a way of ending those conversations quickly. The irony wasn't lost on me that her plan had worked perfectly, just not the way she'd intended. She had gotten me out of her life, but she'd also lost everything else in the process. Her job became uncomfortable when colleagues learned about the affair, and she eventually had to find work elsewhere. Meanwhile, I received a promotion and was assigned to a position that required minimal travel. My relationship with my children grew stronger than it had ever been. They saw how I'd handled an impossible situation with dignity and restraint, and they respected the choices I'd made. Looking back, I realized that the text message from my daughter was the best thing that could have happened. It gave me the information I needed to protect myself and my family before the situation could get worse. Without her courage in reaching out, I might have returned home to find divorce papers waiting and assets already hidden. The homecoming surprise had worked exactly as planned. My wife never saw it coming, and the look on her face when she realized her carefully constructed deception had crumbled was worth every uncomfortable moment that followed. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the natural consequences of their choices. She wanted a different life, and now she had it. She just hadn't considered what that life would actually look like without the security and stability I'd provided. My daughter's text message had saved more than just my marriage. It had saved my future.